The space is yours.
Thank you very much. Um, uh, I'm hoping that maybe you'll invite me back, and this is only the first time I'll be reading, and it'll be like a calling card. So I'm going to read tonight only from my book, The Briar Patch, which, by the way, is being offered on a special deal by my publisher, Hobblebush Books. And after I'm done, I'll put into the chat a link to them. They're doing a 2-for-1 special on their books right now. And as thank you, Leopolda, for that introduction and for letting me be here. And I should say that I prefer letting my poems speak for themselves. I don't tend to talk a lot about the poems. I sort of go along with Robert Frost saying, if I could have said it any differently, then I would have written it differently. But I will begin. Rule number 1. Everything is attached. In the briar patch, whichever way you turn, somebody gets scratched. Rule number 2, your eyes bleed when they are plucked out and weep when they are stuck in. Proceed accordingly. Your oldest friend needs that woman, that job, no more than you do. Friendships mend if they are meant to. Have some fun. Make some money. Get what you can. Above all, look out for number 1. The publisher of the book wanted me to make this next poem's, the title poem, Underwater. Underwater, under cold water, I pull and stroke, holding tight to my chest the warm air, letting it out in useless bubbles by the count of kicks, farther and farther from the shore. Even here, there is above and below, darkening as I make for the center of the wide lake, while overhead, a small circle of every day swims with me, always the same blue and always ready to save my life. Starting school. On the opening day, all you need is a pencil in your fist. If they can't give you a pencil, you've already learned the first lesson, and all you need is the fist. Last week in this, in the open mic or in the feature reading, there was a lot of reference to Russia, a lot of poems about traveling in Russia, and I have spent a lot of my time in Russia, and I translate Russian poetry, and I'm sort of deeply involved in contemporary Russian culture. And this next poem is sort of a capsulization and capsuling of cultural history in Russia after perestroika. And it's very interesting because in the last stanza, I refer to Joseph. And of course, the Joseph I refer to is the biblical Joseph. But on the other hand, there's also Joseph Stalin. And I had occasion at one point to be reading the poem in Serbia. And I suddenly realized as I was reading the poem in Serbia that it also applied equally to Joseph Tito in the former Yugoslavia. So it seemed to be an all-purpose reference. The poem is called In Interesting Times, and I'm sure you know the supposedly the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. The statue fell and shattered in the square. Poets had trouble with that. Lacking a plinth to plaster verses on, life wasn't fair. We could rejoice in freedom for a month or two, but liberation wore as thin as the new flood of sleazy magazines that showed nothing but skin, always more skin. Where was the blood? Where were the fucking bones? The foreign press had other fish to fry. Attention shifted to the sufferings of poets proscribed 2 continents away. What could we write about? There's always love, of course, and existential angst, and picking up experimental threads to be rewoven with a novel vengeance into a resurrection of the dead. And so we did. We made an avant-garde out of our ancestors. We raised our banners like Bibles to intimidate the horde with incantations of archaic honors. And now a generation has arisen that knew not Joseph, nor our years of thirst. Let them be the chosen for a change and find a rhyme for cursed. Now and then. Bodies surface in the bay every now and then, bloated to anonymity. We take them in. We give them new names, old wives, and comfortable homes when they arrive, and try to make them talk. They are steadfast in their silence and their lack of helpfulness. Sooner or later, we forget their provenance. Now and then, an empty boat bobs in the distance. I very much enjoy writing in other voices, voices very distant from my own. And the whole section of this book, the section called Now and Then, in fact, is mostly in other voices. Here is Woman of the High Plains. The ground boils here, but slowly, not like the water in my pot stripping a cooked chicken to bone and soup, separable identities. It takes, they say, 9 years or more for a man to render down to broth, and then his skeleton can be picked out and thrown away. My husband now would pinch the soil each spring and taste it for the planting, knowing what it needed until it needed him. The axe murderer's daughter. The axe murderer's daughter got a brand new yellow tutu and satin slippers for her 8th birthday. And today is every other Saturday, time to visit with her mother where he lives. Ever since the accident, she was too young to remember, almost. How she hates the long drive, the iron doors and corridors, the dirty little room where 3 bored men watch her mother talking to him, 2 girls fidgeting. What is she supposed to think about the stranger she's supposed to love for her mother's sake and Jesus? She will stop visiting when she goes away to college, but write faithfully every month. He will learn about her own 2 children, her divorce, her move out of state, her new home. She will give instructions to the chief of police. There is always talk of budget cutting, of letting the safe ones out. If ever he shows up in town, shoot on sight. But today she will dance for him in the dirty metal room to canned music borrowed from her teacher. She will wear her yellow tutu and satin slippers her mother, sister watching, and 3 bored guards. And he will watch her too, saying afterwards, "My little girl, that's my little girl." One of the things that it's interesting being a Jewish writer and people sort of wanting me to write about Jewish themes. And when I do, they're not always comfortable when I do. Here is a poem that takes its title from one of the Psalms. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, if I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. Chief joy. Christ, I wish I could write in Irish, deal down rhymes to rout black rats, harp on the wind across green fields, and glory in heroes with singing shields. I curse my father for the name of cats. Jesus, I'd like to write in English and carol the queen of the azure snood, or chase rare birds and country maids, and sigh to death when the twilight fades. But I've been cheated, screwed and Jewed. Father omnipotent, Welsh and Scottish, or chapel, I'd prefer in my mouth on a stony hillside instead of this licorice Eastern flavor. I hear America singing, Lord, the lawless songs of 1,000 tribes, hymning and humming in rhythms of jazz, the wonders of new utopias, and scorn for Pharisees and scribes. Israel, hear my present anguish. Forgive me for the craft of longing. The promise is no substitute for certain country underfoot and the impossible belonging. Go. Life story. I know the story. How the spider mates and dies, and then the old haymow is thick with spiders. How in generic terms, there is no death, and life cleaves to starfish and worms under the knife. How the word just learned appears in every paragraph until it is burned like a lover's epitaph into the brain. How even a stupid passion will not be killed, but now in a blizzard of fine silk will fasten its filaments and dormant seed on any object for the chance to breed. The new bridge. You know, that's in European cities, the oldest bridge in the city is always called the New Bridge. And the reason it's called that is because it was the first bridge that was built of stone. And so it became known as the New Bridge because, and while the other bridges were gone, that one remained. So this is the New Bridge. They built it of unmortared stone and started calling it the New Bridge. Later, the older wooden ones burned to the water's edge, one by one, in their own time, and not without replacement. But the new bridge kept its name downstream from concrete abutment and suspended steel. And still, in my heart, I call you lover, though even the river has silted full and changed its course forever. I don't know how the timing goes. This will be possibly the last poem I read right now. If you say I have time, maybe I'll read a translation or two, but well, that's up to you. This is Out. Everything will, you know. The bone harp singing in the king's hall, the cunning wound, tobacco-stained carpeting, a telephone call, Colonel Mustard in the dining room with a wrench, Raskolnikov in existential gloom, brothers wrestling over a pocket knife on a slippery riverbank, strangers stretched out on their knees. Fingering a pistol, jilted Frankie nails Johnny in his BVDs. That's how it is. What we act in private becomes the matter of music, the marrow of related fact in a storyteller's patter. And nothing we can dream is left without beforehand or afterwards unaccounted for. When we laughed, our laughter was broadcast by the birds. And when you slammed the door, an old shaman in a weather-beaten tent half the world away finished the story and told me where you went. Thank you.
Well, Jim, if you've got a translation, I mean, given my deepening appreciation for the translation of other poets and other, from other languages and other cultures, I'd love to hear it.
Well, how much time do you want me to? Much more time do you want me to take up so I can read one or two?
That's a good question. About 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll read a couple here. Okay. Right. Here's by Olivier de Magny. Ahoy, Sharon, Sharon, you ferryman to hell. Who is it who summons me with such insistent fervor? It is the exhausted, weeping spirit of a faithful lover who has suffered only ill for loving all too well. What do you want of me? Passage across your river. What is the cause of death? A question all too cruel. It is love that killed me. Into the dark valley I will never ferry those whom love commands, not ever. Sharon, for pity's sake, please receive me in your boat. Look for another pilot, because neither I nor fate defies this master of the god, he whom all must fear. I will go in spite of you then, for within my soul, love has such dominion, and my eyes so many tears, that I will be the river and the ferry and the pole. Here's Jacques Prévert, another French poet, Blood Orange. The zipper slid down your flank, and the whole providential storm of your body and love in the midst of shadows suddenly exploded, and your dress slipping to the waxed tiles made no more noise than an orange peel falling on a rug. But under our feet, its tiny mother of pearl buttons crackled like seeds. Blood orange, fruit of delight. The point of your breast drew a new luck line in the palm of my hand. Blood orange, fruit of delight, sun in the night. And I will end then with one Russian poem. Arsen Mirzaev is a poet who lives in St. Petersburg, and this is a poem he wrote called O Ludmila. These days, the freaks are taking over. These days, nothing works, Ludmila. Nature's given up on weather. Even water runs uphill. A little drizzle, crying cat. This morning, I rolled out of bed, an empty feeling in my gut, and fell on the unlucky side. Women sang to catch my ear. Musicians filed into church. Pigeons settled in my hair. Couldn't find a better perch. After that, a rising moon glittered from a long way off, and someone's eyes, and you were gone, Ludmila. But I played it tough, not crying yet. I keep my cool. That's who I am, right on top. Between the two of us, I'm still smart and strong and acting up. Thank you.
And I'm muting myself.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really, really glad to be here with all of you. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. And thanks to Jim. I was really pleased to hear those poems for the first time, especially those translations. Those were really lovely. So I'll start. Like Jim said, I don't do a lot of exposition in between poems. I just sort of plow. So the first one is called Perfume. I remember my mother's heavy winter perfume. I remember how she tilted her head back to expose her neck, and the mist like a flower head of fireworks burst from the atomizer, golden in the bedroom lamplight, and suddenly the scent, the elixir, the spicy elixir from her throat tingled in my nose. I remember the finery she brought out, the strappy shoes with dainty rhinestone buckles, the bangle bracelet slipped from the cavernous jewelry box to her wrist, fastened with a tiny click. I remember the satin beaded bag, only big enough for a tube of lipstick, a clean tissue, a brass box for aspirin. I remember dread, though she couldn't leave for long in her skinny dinner and dancing heels with only these few things. The night was a comfort somehow. The cold was a deep polished blue, and the lights were cold too. The street lamps shone through the sheer bedroom curtains. They spoke of winter mysteries soon to come. A dark room lit by a tree, a solo voice from the stereo singing of a holy and bright night, the voice that begot a heart-swelling joy, but also grew a tenderness. How could a God be so small, so unadorned? I was blessed to be loved by this simple God, this pretty mother, and a father who paced by the door in his good dark suit, waiting for her to appear. The next is called Dr. Blessing for Mama. She stumbled out into the bright street like a zombie. A child hid his face in his mother's skirt. She couldn't tell if she were drooling without gingerly touching her chin. Her slack jaw held a silver plug where the sweet tooth had eaten itself, left a sugar cave in the ivory. Dr. Blessing, whom she had heard scream at the howling child behind the door, had drilled too far, tapped the live wireworks, jumping with signals, and chuckled, "Guess I struck a chord." Plucked the nerve that drove her right eyelid wide open, as if she'd had a stroke or a revelation. She rose from the chair, reeled into the waiting room with a gleaming pearl eye, and saw it all. The quivering lips of the inconsolable children, each crease of the tattered magazines, every crooked yellow tooth in Dr. Blessing's mouth. In keeping with the theme of teeth, this one's called The Tooth. The streusel cakes my great-grandfather ate are in the tangles of my genes. Brown sugar, cinnamon, butter, cravings undiluted through the tiered generations. All of us have the tooth in the center of the brain where cane grows. Show me a sugary thing and that lobe lights up. Saliva glands swell, palms flush with damp, tongue anticipates a zealous melting, and down comes a rush of gratitude to the man with a match who burns the field, to the man with a machete who takes down the crop, to the flour-dusted baker frosting cake borders, spelling well wishes to all people gathered in one room, passing slices of good cheer refined from the raw. The farm on Fox Hill Road. We were at our best in silence, rumbling in the high cab of the old Ford over the train tracks back of town, past the empty little schoolhouse, the horse pastures, and finally Fox Hill Road. Our daily bickering often turned bitter, few battles passed over, instead picked and waged, but an unspoken truce settled in the truck. We slid down from the seats, a far fall from me, and parted ways at the top of the gravel drive, my father to mow the grass, inspect the potatoes that still grew, or check the property for signs of vandals. His great fear that a local kid would tumble down a well shaft, or the attic floor would give under the trespasser's weight and he'd be sued. The farm in his name now and vacant. Mama said he needed time to putter. away from our overoccupied house, though she worried about getting help up the drive in time with no phone on the place. While he did what I did, I wandered everywhere but the outhouse and cellar, my own imposed limits. The horse barn, garage, chicken coop, granary, the well, Mary's grotto, the horse with its pump at the sink, the house with the pump at the sink, summer kitchen, giant metal ring pull on the cellar door. I found old letters, a $10 bill, a piece of pretty red glass in the grotto. At the end of our shift, he collected me from wherever I was snooping, and we climbed back into the cab for the slow, quiet ride home. No questions or conversation, just the squeak of the blue bench seat, the chug-chug of the sluggish engine, content on the outskirts where few drivers tailed us, quarrelsome back in town. Prophecy. He lands in her hovel, unfurls his glorious display. Light and loose feathers tumble from his beaming white wings. At the small hearth, she trembles before him, praying he's not sent from God, praying a fire will consume her before he can say the word chosen. She wants no part in this prophecy, no matter how wide the wingspan, no matter whose will be done. But her skin is a fertile land, and God is so convincing. Every pore he touches bears a branch, a bloom, until she is overcome in flowering vines, a forest of servitude, finding favor with God. How does a virgin refuse his finger on her lips, silencing her protests, reminding her it wasn't a question? The next two poems are ekphrastic, and I'm hoping that without the art that they're referring to, they'll still make some sense. This one's called Daphne, as sculpted by Renee Sentinas. Crowns for the sweaty heads of champions is a lousy concession. I'm free of Apollo, sure, but why must I be arrested? My only motion swaying in the grove. Being rooted by the river is the best my father could do. I heard Apollo's voice in my ear, a twisted whisper thrown like a cheap ventriloquist. I bolted like a spooked deer. How swiftly I sped. In the moment of my plea, a shifting. I slowed, then stopped. My hair a swarm of slender boat-shaped leaves. Under my arms, green fringe sprouted at the hollows. Leaves grew from my feet, and my feet cleaved to earth. I lengthened. Skyward my arms stretched. My skin turned to bark. Even my breath changed into a far-reaching mist, a fog forming over the prickly thistle. I did admire the transforming, nearly swooning as my leaves flashed silver in the light of the moon. But now that I'm stuck, a shining laurel planted in river muck. This one is, it's a painting by Kehinde Wiley. Not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he's a Black artist, and what he does is he reimagines a classical painting, usually with white subjects, very opulent typically, and reimagines. So this is called Princess Victoire of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha 2012, as painted by Kehinde Wiley.
Amy, could you say again, describe the painting, because you froze and I didn't get the audio. I think I know who you're talking about.
Oh,
So,
sure.
yeah, just say that part again.
Sorry about that. It's a painting by Kehinde Wiley. So he's a Black artist, and what he does is he reimagines paintings, typically paintings, I'm not sure if he does sculpture, that had white subjects, typically very opulent, and he reimagines them with Black subjects, Black people, in the same positions. So this is Princess Victoire of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha in 2012, painted by Kehinde Wiley. I am mythical, but I am no Daphne, crying out and becoming these flowering vines. No one will overcome me. I am in the thicket, a wall of lush leaves and blooms, popping color and fragrance that will part to let me in. But before I am enveloped, this moment is set to waters. my hair piled and coiled like a tree in summer, my sheer sleeves and watteau signaling my leisure. Nothing about this ensemble says I toil. This is no gunny sack, no burlap, no cast off from the big house. This gown was made for me, bespoke. But I don't burn down the bridge when I go. It must be intact to come back. You don't know what's tucked in my locks, what the weight my slim neck carries. See the vine at my hem, at my knee, ushering me like ancestors. This one's called Olive Shores. We were quarreling, then quiet in the rental, a frost settling over us. We reached Olive Shores along Lake Michigan, left the car, took the stair leading into deep green. A breeze shivered the needles of the tall pines, lulling our tempers. Beyond lie the lake, we could hear this rushing too. Past the forest canopy, the water threw light from its faceted caps. Glassy grains shimmered the shore. Our limbs loosened. We planted footprints like pioneers. He waded in. He bobbed and waved. I ran the beach, thrilled as my heels sank in the hot sand, zinged by the chill of the little seiche. He left the water, chasing until he caught me. How fine to be ensnared in his wet arms on that empty beach in the bright sun. My cool pride washed away. This is called Morning Glory. What hour do you swivel open, the consistency of clockwork, to unfurl your corolla the color of royals? I know it's early, before sunrise even. Your pollinator's up at dawn too, to tumble down your white throat. I pet you as I pass, velvet bell horn under my thumb. You twine around sunflower stalk, stair rail, fence. Some say your vines are invasive. If given the space, you are voracious. But by afternoon, you begin to fold the parasol of your face. How many ways to say your blooms die each day? Monday's flower is not Tuesday's. You bloom like shark teeth. American summer. The sun's got his teeth in by 10. Neighbors ignite their black cat firecracker bricks in the street. A flag in the window and smoke in the yard. Fresh kill splayed on the grill, and tomorrow scavengers will scour the fairgrounds for cash, sifting through pull-tab bingo cards, paper cones stained with shaved ice syrup. Tonight, the long-paired partners promenade in a honky-tonk time warp. Kids run barefoot over gravel. Clay pigeon shooters yell pull well after dusk. Someone gets thrown from a carnival ride every summer, but that doesn't mean you dismantle the octopus. The dark winter fields. The dog takes off to sniff the perimeter and mark every offending scent to say, I was here, I was here. I trip over deep ruts if I'm not watching each booted step. It's a still night, quiet, save for the circles she runs around me, her tags jingling, save for my own footfall and white breath, a snapped twig. I'm insulated like an astronaut, wrapped in down, fleeced head to fingertip. If I fell hard here on this dark side of the street in this forgotten field, how long before anyone would find me, stiffened, surprised? My brothers and sisters wintered with the great death, the death of the mother, the first face on earth to gaze on us, to coo and sing. These frozen weeks, I am reminded how easily we crumple and go down and go away wherever we go. The fine tendril we hold to is not like a spider's silks, thin but strong. It's hair, coiled and ornery, ordinary like the silver strands at my own hairline. Still, we are bodies on this earth. We leave footprints until the snow blows over them. We leave an imprint in a chair, a house full of baby bonnets and dishes and photos. We mark it so briefly, I was here, I was here. Closing time. It's so late, it's morning, no more songs. The barkeep unplugs the jukebox. Tonight I was purely ornamental, perched and misty, swooning on my stool as a band of tanked groomsmen lifted an old man to his feet outside the dance hall. For me, one to carry home to my friend afternoon. I've inherited my father's rowboat of despair. Last Easter, the sadness was palpable. Under the pastel banners in the nave, I counted the dead. A generation clicked shut, the closets cleared, how little we knew them. On the walk, a sparrow left behind a single feather so slim it wasn't even a cloud, it wasn't even a breath. A tangle of honeysuckle vines sweetens the arm of the fence. Morning is a new order of seraphim burning in their wings. Beyond the canopy of trees, the sky is quilted in their light. And this is the last poem. It's called You Might Be Everything. A ring of clouds like a crown, a mountain in the middle. Keep driving and it's lost, shifts to a feathery, shapeless field. A green shimmering pond, a grove of pines in the shallows. Intermittent rain all morning in the sandstone formations. Pools form in the hollows of the rock and my dog drinks from them. At the bottom tip of Illinois, a cave in the rock on the bank of the Ohio River. The crags inscribed with variations of I was here. Swallows flit from nests in the cliff, tiny dens of mud with swallow-sized holes. Cave mud cakes our calves. 2 lanes running along the train tracks, car after car shuttling goods to these blink towns, a church sometimes 2 in every one. Ferry across the Ohio on the Lonnie Joe and land in Marion, Kentucky. In Versailles, a plump pink and yellow rose in the yard of a dead statesman turned soldier. In Louisville, magnolia blooms big and bright, lit lanterns in the leaves. 6 months now you've been gone. I feel like I'm leaving you, driving south of the place where your body dwelled. But I can't go far from you because you might be anywhere, everywhere. You might be everything. These tall pines with knobby knees, the silver sky flashing between the slender trunks, the yellow fields, the steep cliffs of Kentucky blasted with dynamite to lay Eisenhower's interstate, the fog hanging in the green hills. I think there is a lake beyond these trees. There's a brightness, a shining that suggests water, a body of. Once again, just wanted to thank everybody for joining in this evening, and thanks to Leopoldo for the invitation. Before I sign off, I wanted to mention a few Black poets I really enjoy in honor of Black History Month. You probably have read these folks, or at least familiar with their work, but a few folks I really enjoy are Hanif Abdurraqib, and these are 2 of his books. The next one is Denez Smith, and these are 2 of their books. The next is Ross Gay, and 2 of his publications. This is the newer one. Jericho Brown, I think this is his latest, The Tradition. You're probably familiar with him, I imagine. And the last one is Danica Kelly. She's got a new book coming out later this year. Really enjoy her work too. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it being here.
And I'm getting to take a class with Jericho Brown in March, so I'm very excited about that. Yeah, I love his work too. This is called Bridged. What if one chose to swim instead of ride, climbed cold and dripping from this blue river, refused towels and fires, every offer, in preference of solitude? What if the wet traveler had no choice? What if an exterior force impelled such watery journeys? Picture it gone, the bridge removed, the river an ocean or a widening gulf, shore receding. Somehow all boats turned sieve. No luxury of bus or bike. This is a strange country, this of both crossings, destitute and rich, choosing and coercion, truth and fiction. A land in our minds welcomes all drifters. And I don't know, are we one or two? What do you think, Leopoldo?
I think we have time for another.
Okay. This one is called Perihelion Pantoum. Today, and of course it's not today, this is back in January. Today, Earth is at perihelion. It's hard to believe we're closest to the sun. Air hangs damp. It's hard to believe when sky hums gray, air hangs damp, and doves refuse their duel. When sky hums gray, I turn this direction to see live things, but doves refuse their duel and perch in isolation around the corner. I turn this direction to see live things, glimpse only a stranger from this perch in isolation. Earth flies nearest its star. I glimpse only a stranger at a distance from me. Earth flies nearest its star. Earth is at perihelion.
About a musical performance a friend gave, about 11 years ago. It's about he and another, he played guitar and his friend who plays cello. And they did a lot of world music, you know, and unfortunately he doesn't live here anymore. He's back in Pennsylvania, but I think the cello player's still out here. So this is in their name, they call themselves Ajira, you know, and you've heard that name before. And this is Ajira at the Metal Arts Collective, January 9th, 2010. The midnight heart of an oud pulses in the, excuse me, okay, I wrote this down, okay. The midnight heart of an oud pulses in the rhythms Don strums on his guitar. Am I right? Okay, a crescent moon gleams in the bow that Ashraf scrapes across his cello as his left fingers blaze up and down the strings under a broken necklace of red neon lights that hang from the ceiling of an electronic cave with the meandering dog on a Saturday night. For the audience come in from a cold Ballard overcast, they play like a small orchestra, ringing with the mountains and the faraway constellations of Morocco. A Mediterranean surf, sunlit with morning, rolls on the screen behind them. As their jazz chords wrap around classical reveries, the notes they pluck grow and mutate like the telescopic images the projectionist turns. Okay, excuse me. The notes they pluck grow and mutate like the telescopic images the projectionist transmits of wine-drenched rubies and blinding diamonds that burn above green forest until they close in a nocturne of Prussian blue stars.
Continuing rumblings will not interfere.
Okay, thank you. And I really enjoyed, I want to say I really enjoyed this, the February issue of Breathe. I thought it was wonderful. So, the pickling of limes. You are a fallen crop, key lime yellow. I'm throwing you together away from the shaded grove of trees to pickle you as if you are Indian limes. It will take 2 weeks. I quarter you, I blanket you, wrinkled rind, corpulent flesh, crimped seeds, with rock salt, dried chili powder, turmeric, cane sugar cast for balance, burnish you under the sun. I unscrew the stiffened lid. The old mason jar smells faintly of apricots. A friend from Chennai calls, asks if she can visit next month, tells me lime and lemon are just one word, Niambu. Sun-soaked, slick with oil, fermented. I will add ingredients foreign to me, fenugreek seeds, roasted and ground, hing powder, black mustard seeds sputtered in sesame oil. Let the oil kiss your skin. As you age, you will taste fiery hot, a feast of chicken biryani eaten with our hands, a glass of chilled kingfisher. I pray my friend will stay a while. And from my book, The Sand Dune Teacher, a much darker poem. Denial. I am not your killer. I did not wait for you under the steel grey moon in the park as you cut through the avenue of cypress trees that Thursday after choir practice at St. Mark's. I never heard you nervously humming Verdi's Requiem in time to your heart's cleaving beat, your performance only days away. I didn't see your weary face, midnight eyes cast down, hands thrust deep in your pockets, blonde hair straying from a silken scarf worn like a death wish around your throat. I read that you were found in underwear and gloves, velvet limbs bound with black rope, facing a tree, wrists tied as though in prayer, your knees jammed into its spreading roots, its branches lifting to heaven. I could only imagine you begging for mercy as the world dissolved around you, as your tears soaked the leaves beneath you, that you were not found wanting as you fell into the darkness. As silence spread like ash on a dying fire, I prayed for you to intercede for me, that what was hidden be revealed, that no sin remain unavenged. I asked for absolution, though the righteous are unsafe, though the faithful endure the pains of hell. Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, deliver me from the deep pit. Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. Lamb of God, Lamb.
Welcome back, Robert.
Oh, I'm glad to enjoy so much good poetry tonight with the rest of you. And actually, this poem follows Claire's poem a bit. It came from a reading of Job recently, the book of Job, chapter 23, verse 17. Job says, "Yet I am not silenced by the darkness." And I was struck by that line. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to write a poem using that. And I chose to write it in the form of what they call a ghazal. It's the Persian form that you'll recognize the form as I read it. So the title of this poem is Come What They Call Morning. Come what they call morning. Yet I am not silenced by the darkness. I'll curse the sirens of darkness, their clickbait and tweets, the little white lies dispensed in darkness. I'll shout down the mall at 2 a.m., the shadows inside like bargains of darkness. I'll insult sports utility vehicles, the vanity under their hoods, that immense darkness. I'll whisper to patients in the COVID ward, sniffing antiseptic incense in darkness, and pray for stragglers in the desert who can't make out distance in the darkness. Presidents snap off the lamp of mercy and order violence in the darkness. My mouth opens and my teeth flash to denounce those scorpions of darkness and defend the short on cash and birthright who live out their sentence in darkness. I keep a diary of my depression, recording every offense of darkness. I lost him and her and him? Do their spirits listen to my rants in the darkness? I'm making my umpteenth speech. I demand an audience in the darkness. Hearing's more acute when the lights are out. I catch more lines to chant in the darkness. I'm not silenced by the darkness. Come what they call morning, I'll silence the darkness.